All right, so what I'd like to do right now is show you a couple of common techniques that you might use in Onshape for modeling things that might be a little bit more realistic or a little bit more difficult to model. So for example, let's say that you have a character that you've drawn as part of your mini golf game or your tabletop game, and you don't want to have to go in and figure out every single line to make this thing. One technique that I really encourage people to do is to go and find a reference image online and put that directly into Onshape as a starting point for your sketches. So let me talk through what that process would look like. I'm going to go over to images.google.com and let me think of a character. Let's say that I want to have a frog in my game. That part of the theme of my game is that I'm going to have a frog, and I want to make a frog in Onshape. Now, all of these pictures of frogs that show up that are photorealistic are going to be impossible to make in Onshape. So I need to first start thinking about whether I want to make this thing as a full 3D model or whether I want to make it as more of what you might consider like a cardboard cutout. In other words, a 2D version of this thing. And I think for my game that I'm making, a 2D version of this is going to work just fine, but I still need to have the overall outline of the frog. So in Google Images, I'm actually going to go over to Tools, and I'm going to change this from Any to either Clip Art or Line Drawing. And what's nice about this is that it's going to immediately show me more simplified sort of 2D versions of this thing. So let's say that this frog right here is going to work for my game, that I'd like to use this as a reference. What I need to do here is that I need to save this image to my computer. I'm just going to save it to my desktop. Or, oh, you know what? I need to actually view and visit this thing first and then save the image. Oh, it doesn't want to let me do that either, so maybe instead I'm going to take a screenshot. Somehow or another I need to get this image saved to my computer. So I'm just going to take a screenshot and we'll call that good. That's because this person doesn't want me to use their image. That's fine. I'm not going to actually use it. I just need it as a reference. All right, so I've got that image saved to my computer. What I need to do now, though, is actually go back to Onshape. And so I'm back in Onshape, and I'd like to actually put that image into my design to start using it as a reference. Every time we use an image in Onshape, we need to do it in the context of a sketch. So here's what that looks like. I'm going to click Sketch, and I'm going to choose my front plane and go to that front view. And now I'm going to come up here and say Insert Image. When I do that, it asks me to find an image file. Because I don't have any yet, I'm going to click Import, and then I'm going to come over to my desktop and find that screenshot that I took and open it. So Onshape will upload that thing, and then as soon as it does, it's going to show up in that Insert an Image view. Now, one quick note, if you're on a Chromebook, your screen may get cut off where you can't see the word Import to actually click that. You may have to shrink your screen size down a little bit, or your window size, your zoom in Chrome to be able to see that. Okay? So I've got it in there though. I'm going to click on my screenshot, and now I want you to watch this really carefully. What I'm doing to insert this is actually drawing a rectangle that's going to contain my sketch. And because this is an object on my sketch, I can do things like dimension it. So let's say in my final drawing, I said that my frog obstacle was going to be 6 inches high. It's going to automatically scale that proportionally to be 6 inches high. Now, if I click the green check, and I try to just extrude this, Onshape doesn't know anything about this because this is just like a visual reference that I could trace on top of. It doesn't know how to extrude this frog because it doesn't know what those lines are. I have to actually go back and put those lines in there. So this part can get a little tedious sometimes depending on what the shape is that you're trying to trace and the amount of details. What I encourage people to do is oftentimes for shapes like this that have a lot of curves, splines are a good way to start, and I'm just going to suggest that you kind of just roughly start clicking around the outline of your thing. Let's say that I was just going to do the frog's head for right now. Each time I get to where it kind of changes direction, I'm just clicking, and I'm just going to come around and complete that shape. Now this is definitely not perfect, but I can get out of my spline tool, I can click on that, and I can start dragging that around to where it actually fits quite a bit better. And maybe I need to add another control point on here. Whoops. I'm trying to remember if I right click on it, I can click Insert Spline Points. That just gives me another control point that I can use to drag around if I need to refine that shape further. So one way or another, I'm going to get this thing into better shape. I'm not going to go through that whole process right this second, but you can kind of see where I'm going with this, I think. I'm going to go ahead and click the green check. And now that I have a closed face, now I can actually click on this thing and extrude it. Now, it doesn't look a whole lot like a frog right now, but I can always go back to my sketch. I can add in more of those details. I can continue to extrude things. I can even go ahead and start adding things like color. So just changing the appearance for the part to make it green instead of blue starts getting me closer, starting to do things like filleting or chamfering. And ultimately what we have to think about is, how am I going to manufacture this thing to put it into my real game? Am I going to laser cut this as a flat part? Am I going to 3D print it as a full 3D model? Or am I just going to grab a piece of wood and cut this shape out of it? Okay, so some of that is going to determine how you go from here. When I extruded it, for example, I just extruded it 1 inch. But if it's just going to be a cardboard cutout, maybe I want to do it 0.15 inches, which is about the thickness of a piece of cardboard. And now I've got that flat cutout that's going to become my frog shape. Okay? So I wanted to show that technique of using an image as a reference to model off of on Onshape. And I think that gets us to where we need to go from here.